What's up, party people, and welcome back to another episode of NYC Foodways, your weekly food and culture discussion from the cultural capital of the world. My name is John, and this week's episode is dedicated to author Michael Pollan, the ultimate man of taste. Isn't it a shame that all desire leads to suffering? This week on NYC Foodways, we focus our lens on the South Korean film Spring, Summer, Fall, Winter, and Spring. Directed by Kim Ki-duk, who died from complications from COVID in 2020 under a cloud of stomach-turning allegations, this film saw a 2004 release in the United States. I was fortunate enough to catch it in Lincoln Center when it came out, and was so struck by its sublime beauty and powerful message that I went back to see it again a week later. 2 decades hence, the seasons of my life have changed, and it's time again to revisit this cinematic gem. Some important questions are asked by this film. What is the price we pay for the harm we inflict upon others? How can we be in this world but not of it? And is it possible to be content if we are attached to the temporary? As I see it, the fundamental tension of conscious existence is the foreknowledge that it is due to end. And yet, in our culture, we are incessantly bombarded with the demands of the here and now. I cannot think of a person less tapped into the eternal than your average New Yorker, burning the candle at both ends and possibly in the center to keep their baseline needs met. Who has the time or energy to ponder the inevitability of death when we are worried about money or school or our career or some social obligation we are bound to, or one of the 100 other things we must get done to keep the hamster wheel spinning? This is what drives rich people to pay for retreats, as if some brief sojourn into the countryside could magically heal the internal rupture many of us endure as a result of the myriad pressures of contemporary urban life. Relatedly, spring, summer, fall, winter, and spring may serve the viewer as a temporary visual and mental retreat. Yep, not exactly the same as joining the order, but hey, us atomized city dwellers gotta play the hands we're dealt. As you may remember from a previous entry in this channel's Filmways series, I'm not super into discussing plot when talking about movies. This works out well here, as the plot could not be less relevant to the underlying message of the film. That everything we do matters, that desire leads to suffering, that our conduct dictates our character, and that, like it or not, seasons change. The seasons listed in the film's title are the 5 chapters of the film, spread out over a time span of perhaps 50 years. This movie, like anything else that closely examines existence, sharply portrays the tension between the opposing forces of life, between urban and rural, between sickness and health, between the self and the universe, between the temporary and the eternal, between gratification and abstinence, between the here and now and the hereafter, between the world of men and the world of spirit, between the earthly and the divine. The protagonist of this film, just like the rest of us, is caught between the pulls of each force. During adolescence, the pull of the material world wins out, and he pays dearly for yielding to his desires. Isn't it a shame that all desire leads to suffering? And isn't desirousness the cornerstone of the dominant global system? To desire economic power, social status, access to the bodies of others? How could a desireless life even occur in such a completely corrupted world without subsuming oneself fully in monasticism? I'm not sure, but this film makes a convincing case for us to do all we can to avoid pursuing the destruction of desire. I frequently find myself pondering the Buddhist concept of karmic debt, that through our negative actions we accrue a spiritual weight according to the magnitude of harm we have wrought upon others. I'm a firm believer in this concept, as I've seen it play out countless times in my own life as well as the lives of others. Karmic debt is elegantly represented in this film by a literal weight affixed to the backs of abusers, one of several interesting motifs that reappear throughout the film. It is only after the weight is affixed that the characters learn the consequences of their actions. Unfortunately, the lesson of karmic debt must be lived to be learned and can never simply be taught, as some weights are carried for life. The lessons of this film are many, and are shown rather than told, that taking the easy way around an obstacle always leads to a more difficult path, that all living beings are to be respected, that lust awakens the desire to possess, and that this then awakens the intent to do violence, and, most fundamentally, that life is nothing other than preparation for death. Incredibly heavy stuff, if one is willing to be open to it. Some of the most memorable images in this film are dedicated to the wordless pursuit of physical fitness. Scenes of martial artistry verge on the poetic. Actually, they are visual poetry and will speak to the soul of anyone who's endured the pain and joy of training alone at a high level of intensity for a long time. Here, as anywhere, physical fitness is the key to self-mastery. Does the weight we carry drag us down, or do we become strong enough to drag it to the summit? Spring, summer, fall, winter, and spring is as sharp as a razor and as subtle as a sigh. Too often I find myself trying to escape the knowledge that material existence is cyclical, that coals burn into ash, that day turns to night, and that life begets death. Unfortunately, there's nothing I can say. You'll have to learn, just like me, and that's the hardest way. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week for another episode of NYC Foodways. Peace.